long before the rise of Rome, before the might of Alexander the Great. There was an empire so vast, so sophisticated, and so influential that it reshaped the ancient world forever. This was the Persian Empire. In this documentary, we will journey through time, uncovering the origins, achievements, conflicts, culture, religion, art, economy, daily life, and the eventual fall of one of the greatest empires in human history, the Persian Empire. The roots of the Persian Empire trace back to the Iranian plateau in the region we now call Iran. The early Persians were part of the larger Indo-Iranian group of peoples who migrated into the region around 1000 BCE. These groups spoke Indo-European languages and settled across the Zagros Mountains, the Elburz Range, and into the Central Plateau. By the 9th century BCE, Persia was a vassal state under the control of the mighty Median Empire. The Medes, another Iranian people, had established a strong kingdom and played a crucial role in the downfall of the Assyrian Empire. The Persians themselves were originally a minor tribe among many. Cyrus II, later known as Cyrus the Great, was born into the Achaemenid Dynasty. Around 550 BCE, he led a successful revolt against the Medes, uniting the Medes and Persians under one banner. This marked the beginning of the Achaemenid Empire, the first Persian Empire. Cyrus would go on to become one of the greatest rulers in history. But his greatness was not just in conquest, it was in leadership, diplomacy, and vision. His reign marked a turning point, laying the foundation of a world empire that would span 3 continents. Cyrus's ambitions knew few bounds. After uniting the Iranian tribes, he turned his focus to the west. His first major target, Lydia, a wealthy kingdom in modern-day Turkey ruled by King Croesus. Cyrus defeated Croesus in battle and brought Lydia under Persian control, capturing its famed gold reserves and expanding his influence westward. Next, Cyrus set his sights on Babylonia, a center of Mesopotamian culture and religion. In 539 BCE, he captured Babylon in a relatively peaceful conquest. The city welcomed him, not as a conqueror but as a liberator, due in part to dissatisfaction with the Babylonian king Nabonidus. What made Cyrus different from other rulers was his respect for the cultures and religions of those he conquered. He did not destroy temples or impose his own gods. Instead, he issued policies that allowed local populations to continue their traditions. The most famous example of this is the Cyrus Cylinder, considered by many to be the world's first declaration of human rights. He allowed the Jewish people who had been exiled to Babylon to return to Jerusalem and rebuild their temple. This act is praised in the Hebrew Bible, and Cyrus is remembered as a hero in Jewish tradition. He is also honored in the Quran, where some scholars interpret him as the figure of Dhul-Qarnayn. Cyrus died in 530 BCE during a campaign in Central Asia. His tomb in Pasargadae remains a symbol of his enduring legacy. Simple and elegant, it reflects the humility of a ruler who had conquered the known world, but ruled with justice and wisdom. After a brief succession crisis involving Cambyses II and the usurper Gaumata, Darius I emerged as king. Darius claimed legitimacy through a distant Achaemenid lineage and quickly consolidated power. He took the throne in 522 BCE and proved to be one of the most effective rulers in Persian history. Darius reorganized the empire to improve efficiency and stability. He divided the vast territory into satrapies, administrative provinces, each governed by a satrap or governor. These governors were loyal to the king but had autonomy to manage local affairs. To prevent corruption, Darius sent royal inspectors known as the king's eyes and ears to monitor satraps. He also standardized currency, introduced a uniform system of weights and measures, and encouraged trade across the empire. The gold daric and silver siglos became symbols of economic stability and were accepted from India to Egypt. One of his greatest achievements was the construction of the Royal Road, a highway that stretched over 1,600 miles, allowing messengers to travel from Sardis in Anatolia to Susa in Persia in just a week, using a relay system of mounted couriers. Darius also invested heavily in monumental architecture. The greatest of these was Persepolis, a ceremonial capital carved into the mountains, adorned with columns, reliefs, and palaces. Built to impress, it symbolized the unity and diversity of the empire. Each nation under Persian rule contributed to its construction and decoration. Darius's reign also marked the expansion of Persian control into India, Libya, and Thrace in Europe, making the Achaemenid Empire the largest the world had ever seen, covering more than 5.5 million square kilometers. But not all was peaceful. Darius faced resistance from the Greeks and later launched the campaign that would spark a new era of conflict. Darius's expansion into the Greek world ignited a conflict that would shape the course of history, the Greco-Persian Wars. In 499 BCE, the Ionian Greek cities in Asia Minor rebelled against Persian rule. Though the revolt was crushed, it drew the attention of the mainland Greeks. Darius launched a punitive expedition in 490 BCE. His forces landed at Marathon near Athens. In a stunning upset, the heavily outnumbered Athenian hoplites defeated the Persian army. Darius vowed revenge, but died before he could launch another invasion. His son, Xerxes I, took up the cause. In 480 BCE, Xerxes crossed the Hellespont with a massive army, supported by a huge naval fleet. The Greeks united under Sparta and Athens. At Thermopylae, 300 Spartans and their allies held back the Persian advance in a legendary act of heroism. Despite the Persians ultimately winning at Thermopylae, the tides turned. The Persian fleet was decisively defeated at Salamis. Xerxes, fearing further losses, retreated. In 479 BCE, at the Battle of Plataea, the Greeks secured a final victory. These wars exposed the limits of Persian expansion and the vulnerability of even the mightiest empires. Yet, Persia retained power and influence in Asia Minor for decades to come. What made the Persian Empire unique was not just its size or power, but the way it managed its vast territories. The empire encompassed many cultures: Persians, Medes, Babylonians, Egyptians, Greeks, Jews, Phoenicians, and more. Each retained their language, religion, and local customs under Persian rule. This policy of tolerance created stability and loyalty. The administrative system was complex yet efficient. Satraps collected taxes, maintained security, and oversaw justice. A courier system relayed information across the empire with impressive speed. Imperial decrees were issued in multiple languages, including Old Persian, Elamite, Babylonian, and later Aramaic, which became the lingua franca. Economically, the empire flourished. Trade routes linked India to the Mediterranean. Goods like spices, textiles, precious stones, and metals flowed through Persian markets. The construction of qanats, underground irrigation channels, allowed agriculture to thrive even in arid regions. Persian art and architecture blended influences from all corners of the empire. Reliefs at Persepolis depict delegations from across the empire bringing gifts to the king, symbolizing unity and diversity. Daily life varied by region. In urban centers, people engaged in trade, administration, and craftsmanship. In rural areas, agriculture remained the backbone of the economy. Women in Persian society, while generally not seen in political life, could own property, run businesses, and were respected in family structures. The spiritual heart of the empire was Zoroastrianism, founded by the prophet Zarathustra, Zoroaster. His teachings emphasized the struggle between good, represented by Ahura Mazda, and evil, embodied by Angra Mainyu. Zoroastrianism stressed moral behavior, truthfulness, and the importance of free will. The concept of a final judgment, heaven and hell, and the coming of a savior deeply influenced later Abrahamic religions. Though Zoroastrianism was the dominant faith, the Persian kings respected all religions. They funded temples, respected priests, and often portrayed themselves as chosen by local gods. This religious pluralism allowed the empire to avoid internal strife. Ceremonial fire temples, sacred rituals, and festivals like Nowruz, the Persian New Year, were central to cultural life. Zoroastrian priests, or magi, were influential figures who played both religious and political roles. The spiritual heart of the empire was Zoroastrianism, founded by the prophet Zarathustra, Zoroaster. His teachings emphasized the struggle between good, represented by Ahura Mazda, and evil, embodied by Angra Mainyu. Zoroastrianism stressed moral behavior, truthfulness, and the importance of free will. The concept of a final judgment, heaven and hell, and the coming of a savior deeply influenced later Abrahamic religions. Though Zoroastrianism was the dominant faith, the Persian kings respected all religions. They funded temples, respected priests, and often portrayed themselves as chosen by local gods. This religious pluralism allowed the empire to avoid internal strife. Ceremonial fire temples, sacred rituals, and festivals like Nowruz, the Persian New Year, were central to cultural life. Zoroastrian priests, or magi, were influential figures who played both religious and political roles. The later Achaemenid rulers were unable to match the vigor and wisdom of their predecessors. Court intrigue, corruption, and heavy taxation weakened the state. Incompetent leadership created rifts between the royal court and the provinces. Rebellions and dissatisfaction grew among various satrapies. In 334 BCE, a new threat emerged from the west. Alexander III of Macedon, better known as Alexander the Great. Young, ambitious, and brilliant, Alexander invaded Persian territory and defeated the satraps at the Battle of Granicus. In 333 BCE, he faced and defeated Darius III at the Battle of Issus. Finally, in 331 BCE, at the decisive Battle of Gaugamela, Alexander's forces overwhelmed the Persian army. Darius fled but was later betrayed and killed by his own men. Alexander entered Babylon, Susa, and Persepolis, where he famously burned the royal palace. Whether this was revenge or symbolic conquest is still debated. The destruction of Persepolis marked not just the end of a dynasty, but the symbolic fall of an ancient world order. The fall of the Achaemenid Empire was not merely a change of rulers, but a transformation of the ancient political landscape. The carefully built systems of administration, communication, and cultural integration that had sustained the empire for 2 centuries were dismantled or absorbed. Yet, Alexander did not simply destroy what he conquered. He recognized the strength of the Persian system. He adopted elements of Persian royal protocol, incorporated Persian soldiers into his ranks, and aimed to rule as a legitimate successor to the Persian kings. He dressed in Persian robes, maintained Persian court customs, and even performed sacrifices to Ahura Mazda, the supreme god of Zoroastrianism. Alexander's attempt at fusion, however, was met with mixed reactions. While some Persians saw him as a new kind of leader, many Greeks resented his adoption of foreign customs. After Alexander's death in 323 BCE, his empire fractured, and Persia came under the rule of the Seleucid dynasty, one of the Hellenistic successor states. Nevertheless, the influence of the Achaemenids endured. The Seleucids, Parthians, and later the Sassanids built upon the legacy left behind. The Persian spirit, its language, architecture, religion, and administrative sophistication, remained deeply embedded in the region. The Persian Empire may have fallen, but its legacy lived on. It inspired future empires in the region, including the Parthian and Sasanian empires. Persian culture, language, and traditions influenced the Islamic caliphates and even modern Iran. The Persian model of administration, tolerance, infrastructure, and communication was studied and imitated by empires across history. Elements of Persian governance can be found in Roman law, Byzantine administration, and Islamic court traditions. Persian innovations in irrigation, road systems, and postal communication laid foundations for efficient empire building in later centuries. The spread of Aramaic and the memory of Persian tolerance helped shape intercultural dialogue long after the empire's fall. Philosophers such as Herodotus, although often critical, acknowledged the uniqueness of the Persian Empire's approach to governance. Even long after its fall, classical writers referenced Persian methods of leadership, emphasizing the empire's bureaucratic excellence and its relatively humane policies toward conquered peoples. The Persian concept of king of kings, a sovereign ruler presiding over a mosaic of cultures and nations, became a blueprint for future emperors, from Roman Caesars to Ottoman sultans. Its religious tolerance and cultural patronage would echo in the policies of Akbar the Great in Mughal India and in the pluralistic societies of the Islamic Golden Age. The ruins of Persepolis, the writings of Greek historians, the respect shown by the Jews, and the continued celebration of Nowruz are all reminders of Persia's enduring greatness. Zoroastrian communities still survive today, particularly in Iran and India, where they are known as Parsis. In every sense, the Persian Empire was more than an empire of conquest. It was an empire of vision, inclusion, and human advancement. The values of justice, cultural respect, and innovation that the Persian Empire promoted continue to inspire to this day. Empires rise and fall, but their stories remain. And the story of the Persian Empire, one of wisdom, war, culture, and wonder, will echo through the ages, reminding us of what humanity can achieve when ambition is matched with vision, and power is tempered by tolerance